Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, your adult children just don't see you the same way they used to? Maybe they used to turn to you for advice, for comfort, for a sense of security, because you were the rock in their lives. But now, it feels like they've outgrown you. Conversations are shorter, visits are fewer, and sometimes, it feels like you're being tolerated rather than truly valued. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something: you are not alone. This is one of the biggest struggles that parents face as their children grow into independent adults. But here's the good news: respect isn't something that disappears forever. It's something that can be strengthened, rebuilt, and deepened over time. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 powerful ways you can gain respect from your adult children without demanding it, without conflict, and without feeling like you have to change who you are. Instead, you'll learn how to shift your mindset, your communication, and your actions in a way that naturally commands respect. And by the end of this video, you'll not only feel more respected, but also more connected to your children than ever before. So, let's start with something that might surprise you. The very first key to gaining respect from your adult children isn't about what you say, it's about how you live your own life. Think about it: when your children were young, they looked up to you. You were the person who knew everything, who could fix anything, who had all the answers. But as they grew up, they started to see you not just as a parent, but as a person. And if they sense that your world revolves entirely around them, that you're waiting for their calls, that you're constantly adjusting your schedule for them, that your happiness depends on their attention, they may not consciously realize it, but they start to lose a certain kind of respect. Why? Because respect comes from admiration. And admiration comes from seeing someone living a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. So, if you want to be respected, the first thing you need to do is show your children that you have a life of your own. That means pursuing your own passions, engaging in activities that bring you joy, and investing in friendships and communities that make you feel alive. Think about something you've always loved doing but maybe put on the back burner. Maybe you used to paint, or dance, or write. Maybe you've always wanted to learn a new language, or travel more, or take up gardening. Now is the time. Not just for your own happiness, but because when your children see you thriving, they can't help but respect you. They'll see that you are strong, independent, and capable of finding joy in your own life, just like you always encouraged them to be. And here's the best part: when you start focusing on your own fulfillment, something interesting happens. Your children will start to take more initiative in maintaining the relationship. They'll want to call you, they'll want to visit, because they'll see that you are a person with a rich and meaningful life, not just a parent waiting in the background. Now, this doesn't mean you ignore your children or stop caring about them. It just means that instead of waiting for them to give you attention, you shift your focus onto yourself. And when you do that, their respect for you grows naturally. Of course, respect isn't just about how you live your life, it's also about how you communicate. And that's what we'll talk about next. Now that we've talked about the importance of having a life of your own, let's move on to something just as powerful: how you communicate with your adult children. One of the biggest mistakes parents make, often without even realizing it, is talking to their grown children the same way they did when they were kids. It's natural; after all, you spent decades guiding them, correcting them, and making sure they were on the right path. But here's the thing: they're not kids anymore. They're adults. And the moment they start feeling like you're treating them as anything less, respect starts to fade. Think about it: have you ever offered advice and felt like your child immediately became defensive? Maybe you suggested they should save more money, or that they should rethink a career decision, or even that they should dress differently. You said it with love, but they heard it as criticism. The key to gaining respect isn't to stop offering advice, it's to change the way you do it. Instead of telling your children what they should do, start asking questions that empower them. Instead of saying, "You really should be saving more money," try, "I remember struggling with saving money at your age. How do you handle it?" This small shift makes a huge difference. Instead of feeling criticized, your child feels valued, like their experiences and thoughts matter. And when they feel that way, they start to respect your wisdom more. Another part of communication that often gets overlooked is learning to listen. Not just hearing what your children are saying, but truly listening, without interrupting, without immediately offering a solution, and without turning the conversation back to your own experiences. Have you ever been in a conversation where you're talking about something important and the other person jumps in with their own story? It's frustrating, isn't it? The same happens with our children. If they're sharing a problem and we immediately say, "Oh, I went through the same thing, here's what I did," they don't feel heard, they feel dismissed. Instead, pause. Nod. Say things like, "That sounds tough," or "I can see why that would be difficult." And then, if they ask for advice, that's your moment. But if they don't, just being a great listener earns you more respect than you can imagine. Another communication shift that makes a big difference? The way we handle disagreements. No matter how much you love your children, there will be times when you don't see eye to eye. Maybe it's about politics, or parenting styles, or how often they should visit. But here's what's important. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to maintain the relationship. The moment a conversation turns into a battle of "I'm right, you're wrong," respect starts to crumble. Instead of proving your point, try saying, "I see where you're coming from." Or, "That's an interesting perspective, I hadn't thought about it that way." This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything your child says, but it shows that you respect their viewpoint. And when you respect them, they will respect you in return. Respect is a two-way street, and often, the way we talk to our children determines how they talk to us. When we treat them as equals, when we listen, when we ask instead of tell, when we stay open-minded, they respond in kind. But respect isn't just built in conversations. It's also built in the way we handle our own emotions and boundaries. And that's what we're going to explore next. One of the biggest challenges in any parent-child relationship, especially as we get older, is learning how to manage emotions and set boundaries in a way that fosters respect. It's easy to think that because we love our children, we should always be available, always understanding, always willing to do whatever they need. But here's something important to remember. Respect comes not just from what we do for others, but from the way we take care of ourselves. Let's start with emotional control. Have you ever been in a situation where your adult child said something hurtful, dismissed your opinion, or acted in a way that made you feel unappreciated? It happens more often than we'd like to admit. And in those moments, it's natural to want to react, maybe with frustration, maybe with a guilt trip, or maybe by shutting down completely. But here's the thing, the way we handle those moments determines whether our children see us as emotionally strong or emotionally reactive. Imagine this, you express how much you'd love to see your grandkids more often, and your child responds with something like, "We're really busy right now." You might feel hurt, maybe even rejected. But instead of saying, "You never make time for me," which can create defensiveness, what if you simply said, "I understand. Let me know when a good time might be. I'd love to see them when it works for you." See the difference? One response makes them feel guilty, while the other makes them feel respected. And when people feel respected, they naturally start giving respect in return. But emotional control isn't just about how we respond in the moment. It's also about letting go of past grievances. Have you ever felt like your child doesn't appreciate all the sacrifices you made for them? That they don't acknowledge everything you did to give them a better life? That feeling is completely valid. But holding on to it, bringing it up in conversations, even in subtle ways, doesn't make them appreciate you more. It often does the opposite. The most powerful way to gain respect from your adult children is to show them that you are at peace with the past. That you don't need validation or gratitude to feel whole. When they see that you are emotionally strong and secure, they admire you. And admiration leads to respect. Now, let's talk about boundaries. One of the most common reasons parents lose respect from their adult children is because they give too much. They say yes when they want to say no. They drop everything the moment their child needs something, even at the expense of their own well-being. Think about it. Have you ever canceled your own plans just because your child asked for a favor? Or lent money when it put you in a difficult situation? Or taken on responsibilities that left you feeling exhausted just to keep the peace? It's easy to do, because love makes us want to give. But respect isn't built on how much we sacrifice, it's built on how much we value ourselves. When you set healthy boundaries, your children may not like it at first. They may push back. But over time, they will respect you more. Saying, "I'd love to help, but I have plans," teaches them that your time is valuable. Saying, "I can't lend money right now, but I can offer advice," shows them that you are willing to support them in a way that is healthy for both of you. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about creating relationships that are built on mutual respect, not obligation. When you respect your own time, your own energy, and your own needs, your children will follow suit. But respect isn't just about emotions and boundaries, it's also about showing your children that you are still growing, still learning, and still living a fulfilling life. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. One of the most surprising ways to gain respect from your adult children is by showing them that your life is still full of purpose and growth. Think about it. When we were raising them, they saw us as the people who knew everything. We were their guides, their teachers, their protectors. But as they got older, something shifted. They gained independence, and in many ways, they became the ones who started giving us advice, helping us with technology, and making decisions without our input. For some parents, this shift is hard. It can feel like we've lost our role in their lives, like we're no longer needed the way we once were. And when that feeling settles in, it's easy to let it affect our self-worth. Maybe we stop trying new things. Maybe we stop learning. Maybe we even start looking to our children for guidance in ways we never used to. But here's the truth: the most respected parents are the ones who continue to grow. The ones who don't just sit back and let life pass by, but who actively seek out new experiences, new knowledge, and new passions. Imagine this: your child comes to visit, and instead of the usual small talk, you tell them, "I just started learning how to play the piano," or "I signed up for an art class," or "I've been reading about a new travel destination I want to visit." Suddenly, the conversation changes. Instead of seeing you as someone who is simply waiting for their attention, they see you as someone who is still embracing life. And here's the key: when they see you thriving, it does two things. First, it makes them proud. They admire you for continuing to grow, and admiration leads to respect. Second, it takes the pressure off them. Many adult children feel guilty when they think their parents are lonely or bored. But when they see you engaged in meaningful activities, that guilt disappears, and the relationship becomes more positive. Now, let's talk about independence. It's natural to want to be close to our children. We love them, we want to be involved in their lives, and sometimes, we even wish things could go back to the way they were when they depended on us for everything. But one of the most powerful ways to gain respect is to show them that while you love having them in your life, you don't rely on them to feel fulfilled. Think about it: people respect those who stand on their own feet. When your child sees that you have your own social life, your own hobbies, and your own routine, they respect you more. It tells them, "My parent is strong. My parent is happy. My parent is someone I can look up to." And this doesn't mean pushing them away. It doesn't mean pretending you don't want to spend time with them. It simply means creating a life that is so full that your happiness doesn't depend on their presence. Have you ever noticed that the people we are most drawn to are the ones who seem genuinely content with their lives? It's the same with our children. When they see you living with purpose, they naturally want to be around you more, not out of obligation, but because they enjoy your company. And speaking of enjoying each other's company, there's one more key factor that plays a huge role in gaining respect from your adult children. It's something that many parents overlook, but it can make all the difference in how your child sees you. One of the most powerful ways to deepen your connection with your adult children and earn their respect is by truly listening to them. Now, you might be thinking, "Of course, I listen. I've been listening to them since they were kids." But the kind of listening that earns respect isn't just about hearing the words they say, it's about understanding who they are now, as adults, and making space for their perspectives, even when they're different from yours. Think about it this way: when your kids were young, you were the authority. You gave them advice, told them what was right and wrong, and guided them every step of the way. But as they've grown, they've developed their own values, opinions, and ways of seeing the world. And sometimes, those views may not align with yours. Maybe they have different political beliefs, a different parenting style, or a different way of handling relationships. In moments like these, it's easy to slip into the role of the parent who corrects, who lectures, who tries to convince them to see things our way. But here's the truth: one of the quickest ways to lose respect is by making them feel like their opinions don't matter. On the other hand, one of the quickest ways to gain respect is by showing them that you value their thoughts, even when they differ from your own. Imagine your child is telling you about a decision they made, and instead of jumping in with advice or questioning their choices, you simply say, "That's interesting. Tell me more about what led you to that decision." That one sentence alone changes everything. It tells them, "I see you as an adult. I respect your ability to think for yourself." This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say. It simply means making them feel heard. When you practice this kind of deep listening, something amazing happens. They start opening up to you more. They start seeking your advice, not because they feel pressured, but because they trust that you will listen without judgment. And with trust comes respect. Now, let's talk about boundaries. Respect in any relationship, whether it's with friends, a spouse, or your children, goes both ways. And one of the best ways to show your children that you respect them is by honoring their boundaries. As parents, it's natural to want to be involved in our children's lives. We want to know what's going on, how they're feeling, and what they're up to. But as they get older, they need space to build their own families, careers, and routines. This doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means their lives are different now. The challenge is that sometimes we don't even realize when we're overstepping. Maybe we call too often, show up unannounced, or give unsolicited advice. And while we do these things out of love, they can sometimes make our children feel overwhelmed or frustrated. But here's the good news: when you show that you respect their boundaries, they respect you more in return. Instead of forcing closeness, you let it happen naturally. Instead of demanding their time, you allow them to come to you willingly. And here's the beautiful part: when your children don't feel pressured, they actually want to be around you more. They don't feel obligated to spend time with you, they genuinely enjoy it. Because instead of being the parent who demands their attention, you become the parent they admire, trust, and respect. Now, you might be wondering, if I give them space, if I stop calling as much, what if they drift away? What if we lose touch? That's a valid fear. But the reality is, when you create an environment of mutual respect, where they feel free to be themselves without guilt or pressure, they'll come to you naturally. And the relationship you build will be even stronger because of it. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, something that can take your relationship with your adult children to a whole new level. It's something that can transform not just how they see you, but how they feel about your presence in their life. One of the most overlooked but most powerful ways to earn deep respect from your adult children is by living your own life with purpose and joy. This might sound surprising. After all, isn't respect about what you do for them? About how you support and love them? Yes, of course. But respect also comes from something deeper: how they see you living your own life. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how people naturally respect those who are independent, confident, and fulfilled? We admire people who have their own passions, their own sense of purpose. The same goes for your adult children. When they see that you are engaged in life, that you have things that excite you, that you are growing, learning, enjoying yourself, it changes how they see you. Let's be honest, one of the biggest fears adult children have is that their parents will become overly dependent on them as they get older. It's not that they don't love you, it's just that they also have families, jobs, and responsibilities. And when they sense that you're living only for them, that your happiness depends on how often they call or visit, it can create pressure. That pressure can lead to guilt, and guilt can lead to resentment. But when they see that you are thriving, that you have hobbies, friendships, a sense of purpose beyond just them, it actually makes them want to be around you more. Why? Because your energy is uplifting. Because instead of feeling like they need to take care of you emotionally, they feel inspired by you. So ask yourself, what excites you? What have you always wanted to do but never had the time for? Maybe it's learning a new language, traveling, painting, gardening, joining a community group, or even starting a small business. When your children see that you're still learning, growing, and embracing life, they don't just respect you, they admire you. And here's something truly powerful: when you live with purpose, you also change the way they see aging itself. Instead of associating getting older with slowing down, they see it as a time of freedom, adventure, and new beginnings. You become an example of what's possible. Now, I know that for some of you, this might feel challenging. Maybe you've spent your whole life devoted to raising your kids, putting them first, and now you're wondering, what do I do for me? It's never too late to start. Even small steps, joining a book club, volunteering, taking up a new hobby, can completely shift your energy and the way your children see you. And here's the best part: when you're happy, when you're fulfilled, it actually brings you and your children closer together. Because instead of conversations being filled with complaints or loneliness, they become filled with excitement. Instead of them feeling obligated to check in, they genuinely want to hear about what you're up to. But there's still one more thing, something that can completely change the dynamic between you and your children. It's something so simple, yet so often overlooked. It's not about what you say or what you do, it's about how you make them feel every time they're around you. Think about the people in your life that you truly enjoy being around. The ones who make you feel good. Who make you feel understood, valued, and appreciated. Now, ask yourself, do your children feel that way when they're around you? This is something that's often overlooked because we tend to focus on what we say rather than how we make people feel. But here's the truth: people remember emotions far more than they remember words. If every interaction with you leaves them feeling guilty, pressured, or criticized, even if you don't mean it that way, they will naturally start to pull away. Now, I know this can be hard to hear. Because the last thing you want is for your children to feel anything but love from you. But sometimes, without realizing it, we say things that create tension instead of connection. Have you ever said something like, "Oh, you're always so busy. I guess I'll see you when you have time." Or maybe, "I wish you would call more. It feels like you don't care." Or even, "You know, when I was your age, I always made time for my parents." These kinds of statements, even when said with love, can trigger guilt. And guilt doesn't bring people closer, it pushes them away. Because instead of feeling happy to talk to you, they start to associate those conversations with stress or obligation. But what if we flip this? What if, instead of making them feel guilty, you made them feel appreciated? What if, every time they spoke to you, they left the conversation feeling lighter, happier, and more at ease? Imagine how much more often they'd want to call or visit. So, what can you do? It's simple: focus on making them feel valued and supported. Instead of saying, "I never hear from you," try saying, "It makes my day every time I get to talk to you." Instead of saying, "You're always so busy," say, "I know you have a lot going on, and I just want you to know how proud I am of you." Do you see the difference? The first approach makes them feel pressured. The second makes them feel good about themselves and about you. And this doesn't mean you should hide your feelings or pretend you don't miss them. Of course, you do. But when you come from a place of love and understanding rather than guilt and expectation, the dynamic completely changes. They don't just respect you more, they genuinely want to be around you. Because let's be honest, life is stressful. Your children are juggling jobs, families, and responsibilities. They're dealing with pressures that you might not even know about. And when they come to you, they don't need more stress. They need a place where they feel safe, where they feel loved, where they feel like they can just be themselves. If you can be that person for them, the one who lifts them up, who reminds them of their worth, who makes them feel unconditionally loved, then not only will you gain their respect, but you'll also strengthen your relationship in ways you never imagined. And speaking of strengthening relationships, there's one more thing that can make all the difference: the ability to truly listen. Not just hearing the words they say, but really understanding them. Now, let's talk about something that may seem simple but is one of the most powerful ways to gain respect from your adult children: listening. Not just hearing them, but truly listening. It's easy to think we're listening when, in reality, we're just waiting for our turn to speak. Or we're listening through the filter of our own experiences, trying to relate everything back to what we know. But deep, respectful listening is different. It's about making the other person feel heard and understood, without judgment, without interruption, and without immediately offering advice. Think about the last time your child shared something personal with you. Maybe they told you about a stressful situation at work or an argument with their spouse. What was your first instinct? Did you jump in with advice? Did you compare it to something from your own past? Or did you listen, without rushing to fix, correct, or teach? One of the biggest mistakes parents make, without realizing it, is turning every conversation into a lesson. Now, I understand where this comes from. You have a lifetime of wisdom. You've been through things they haven't. You've learned tough lessons, and you want to protect them from making the same mistakes. But here's the thing: sometimes, people don't want advice. They just want to be heard. Your children are adults now. They don't need a teacher or a supervisor. What they need, more than anything, is someone who will listen without judgment. Someone they can talk to without feeling like they're being corrected, lectured, or told what to do. Imagine this: you're sharing something personal with a friend, and instead of really listening, they immediately tell you what you should have done differently. How would you feel? Probably frustrated, maybe even a little dismissed. That's exactly how your children feel when every conversation turns into a lesson. So, how can you change this? The next time your child shares something with you, resist the urge to give advice right away. Instead, practice active listening. Make eye contact. Nod. Say things like, "That sounds really tough," or "I can see why that would be frustrating." Reflect their emotions back to them: "Wow, that must have been so stressful." And then, this is the most important part, ask, "Do you want advice, or do you just want to vent?" This simple question changes everything. Because it shows respect. It shows that you're treating them like an equal, rather than someone who constantly needs to be guided. You'll be surprised how often they'll say, "I just need to get it off my chest." And in that moment, you've given them something incredibly valuable: a safe space. A place where they can be open without fear of judgment. And when they do ask for advice, that's when you know they truly respect your wisdom. Because instead of feeling like it's being forced on them, they're coming to you by choice. Over time, this kind of listening builds trust. It turns you from a parent they feel obligated to talk to into someone they actually want to confide in. And that's how respect is built, not through authority, not through rules, but through a genuine, mutual connection. And speaking of connection, there's another key element that makes all the difference: letting go of expectations and accepting them as they are. Let's talk about something that's easier said than done: letting go of expectations and accepting your children for who they are. This is one of the hardest things for any parent. You've spent decades raising your children, guiding them, teaching them right from wrong. It's natural to have expectations for them, even when they're fully grown. You want them to make good choices. You want them to live up to their potential. And deep down, you might even want them to follow the path you had imagined for them. But here's the truth: your child is not the same person they were when they were 10, 15, or even 25. They've grown into their own person, with their own values, beliefs, and ways of doing things. And sometimes, those values don't align with yours. Maybe they live a different lifestyle than you expected. Maybe they don't visit as often as you'd like. Maybe they're raising their own kids in a way you don't fully agree with. And that can be painful. It can feel like they're rejecting the way you raised them. But if you want to build a strong, respectful relationship, the most powerful thing you can do is accept them fully, without conditions. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt pressure to be someone you're not? Have you ever had someone, maybe a boss, a friend, or even your own parents, who made you feel like you weren't enough? It's a terrible feeling, isn't it? That's exactly how your children feel when they sense that you're disappointed in them. Even if you don't say it directly, they can feel it in your tone, in your reactions, and the subtle ways you compare them to others. And here's the difficult truth: when people feel judged, they pull away. They stop sharing, stop calling, stop visiting as often. Not because they don't love you, but because no one wants to feel like they're constantly being measured against expectations they can't meet. So, how do you change this? Start by letting go of comparisons. Every child is different. Just because your neighbor's son calls his parents every day doesn't mean your child is a bad son or daughter for calling once a week. Just because someone else's child followed in their parents' footsteps doesn't mean yours is wrong for choosing a different path. Instead of focusing on what they're not doing, focus on what they are. If your child is kind, hardworking, or doing their best in life, acknowledge that. If they make an effort, even if it's not in the way you expected, appreciate it. And most importantly, tell them. Tell them, I'm proud of you. Not for what they've accomplished, not for what they've given you, but simply for who they are. This doesn't mean you have to agree with every choice they make. It doesn't mean you have to ignore your feelings. But it does mean making the choice to accept them as they are, rather than wishing they were different. Because here's what happens when you do: when your child feels fully accepted, they start to open up. They feel safe around you. They respect you, not because they have to, but because they want to. And isn't that the kind of relationship we all want? Not one built on obligation, but one built on real, mutual respect. And speaking of relationships, there's another key to gaining respect from your adult children: learning how to let go of control and embrace a new role in their lives. Letting go of control, it sounds simple, but for many parents, it's one of the hardest things to do. For decades, you were the one making decisions. You decided what was for dinner, what time they had to be home, which school they attended. You helped with their homework, guided their friendships, and even gave advice on their first job. But now, they're adults. They have their own families, their own careers, their own way of doing things. And here's the tough part: they don't need you in the same way they used to. That doesn't mean they don't love you. It doesn't mean you're not important to them. But your role has changed. You're no longer the authority figure in their life. You're no longer the one calling the shots. And for many parents, that shift can feel like a loss. Maybe you still find yourself giving advice, even when they don't ask for it. Maybe you feel frustrated when they make choices that you wouldn't make. Maybe you wish they would just listen to you, because deep down, you believe you know what's best for them. But here's the thing: no one likes to feel controlled. Not your spouse, not your friends, and definitely not your adult children. The more you try to steer their lives, the more they'll resist. And that resistance often leads to distance. Have you ever had a conversation where your child got defensive, even though you were just trying to help? Maybe you gave a suggestion about how they should parent their kids, or how they could manage their finances better. And instead of gratitude, you got silence, or even an argument. It's not that they don't value your wisdom. It's that they want to feel capable of making their own decisions, without feeling like they're still being parented. So how do you shift your role? How do you offer guidance without making them feel controlled? It starts with trust. Trust that you raised them well. Trust that they will figure things out, even if they make mistakes along the way. Trust that they are capable of living their own life, in their own way. And instead of giving unsolicited advice, try this: wait until they ask. If they come to you for help, that's your chance to share your wisdom. But if they don't, let them navigate things on their own. Because when they know they can turn to you without fear of judgment, they'll be more likely to seek your advice when they truly need it. And when they do ask, instead of telling them what to do, ask questions. Help them think through the problem. Guide them without taking over. For example, if your child is struggling with a parenting decision, instead of saying, "Well, when you were a kid, I did it this way," try asking, "What have you tried so far? What do you think would work best?" This shift does something powerful. It shows them that you respect their ability to make their own choices. And in turn, they will respect you more for it. Because here's the truth, respect is a two-way street. When you respect their independence, they will respect your wisdom. When you let go of control, they will feel safe enough to come to you, not just as a parent, but as an equal. And when that happens, your relationship transforms. Instead of tension, there's trust. Instead of distance, there's closeness. Now, there's one more powerful way to gain respect from your adult children, and it has nothing to do with what you say or do. It has everything to do with the example you set. Think back to when your children were little. They watched everything you did. They copied the way you spoke, the way you handled problems, even the little habits you didn't realize they noticed. Now that they're adults, that hasn't changed. They still see how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and how you respond to life's challenges. One of the most powerful ways to earn their respect isn't by telling them how to live, it's by showing them. Let's say you want them to be more patient with you. Are you patient with them? Do you get frustrated when they don't call as often as you'd like, or do you respect that they have their own busy lives? Do you complain that they don't visit enough, or do you appreciate the time they do give, even if it's less than you'd hope for? Respect is often a reflection. When your children see you handling things with grace and understanding, they're more likely to mirror that behavior back to you. And this goes beyond just your relationship with them. How do you talk about other people? If they hear you constantly criticizing others, your neighbors, your friends, even other family members, it creates a certain energy. And whether they realize it or not, they start to see you as someone who is hard to please, someone who might be just as critical of them. On the other hand, if they see you speaking kindly, focusing on the positives, and giving others the benefit of the doubt, they will respect you more for it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being mindful of the example you're setting. And that includes how you handle challenges in your own life. Think about how you react when things don't go your way. Do you complain? Do you blame others? Or do you find a way to move forward with a positive mindset? Your children are watching. If they see you staying strong in difficult times, if they see you continuing to grow, to learn, and to adapt, they will respect you, not just as a parent, but as a person. Because here's something that often gets overlooked, your children want to look up to you. Even as adults, they still want to admire you. They want to see you thriving in your later years, not just getting by. They want to see you excited about life, taking care of yourself, finding new hobbies, staying active, because that inspires them. It shows them that aging doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean fading into the background. It means continuing to grow, continuing to find joy, continuing to be someone they respect and admire. So ask yourself, what example am I setting? Am I showing my children what it looks like to live a life of purpose, confidence, and kindness? Because when you do, respect follows naturally. And as we continue, there's one final, powerful way to deepen the respect and connection between you and your adult children, one that has the potential to transform your relationship in ways you may not expect. Imagine a moment when you and your child are sitting together, maybe over coffee or a quiet afternoon visit. The conversation is flowing easily, and for the first time in a long time, you feel truly heard, truly seen. There's a sense of warmth and understanding between you. Now, think about what made that moment possible. It wasn't just the words exchanged, it was something deeper. It was trust. Trust is the foundation of respect. And one of the most powerful ways to strengthen that trust is by showing your children that you truly listen to them. Not just hearing their words, but really listening. It's easy to fall into the habit of responding with advice, especially as a parent. After all, you've spent most of your life guiding them, teaching them, helping them make the right choices. But now, they're adults. And sometimes, what they need most isn't advice, it's understanding. Think about the last time your child shared something personal with you. Did you listen without interrupting? Without immediately offering a solution? Without dismissing their feelings or telling them how they should feel instead? It's a habit many parents develop over time, jumping in with their own experiences, with words of wisdom, with reminders of how things were different back in the day. But what your children often need most is to feel validated, to know that their emotions, their struggles, and their perspectives matter. When they talk about feeling overwhelmed at work, instead of saying, "You think that's hard? You should have seen what I went through," try saying, "That sounds really stressful. I'm proud of you for handling so much." When they express frustration about raising their own children, instead of saying, "Well, I raised you just fine without all this modern parenting nonsense," try saying, "Parenting today is so different. It sounds like you're doing an amazing job." Small shifts like this change everything. Because when your children feel heard, they respect you more. They see you as someone they can confide in, not someone they have to defend themselves against. And when they trust that you will listen without judgment, they will open up more. They will invite you into their lives in a deeper way. It's a gift, really, this ability to simply be present for them. And the beautiful thing is, it works both ways. When you show them what real listening looks like, they will start to do the same for you. The next time you share something meaningful, you may notice that they listen a little more closely, that they ask deeper questions, that they respond with the same kindness and understanding you've shown them. Because respect isn't demanded. It's built, moment by moment, through the way we treat each other. And in the end, that's what strengthens a relationship, not grand gestures, not words of wisdom, but the simple act of making someone feel valued, heard, and respected. There's something truly powerful about feeling heard, isn't there? When someone genuinely listens to you, not just nodding along, waiting for their turn to speak, but really paying attention, it makes you feel valued. It makes you feel respected. And when you give that same gift to your adult children, something shifts. They start to see you not just as a parent, but as a person. Someone they can talk to. Someone they can trust. But respect is about more than just listening. It's also about something that can be a little harder to do, letting go of control. As parents, we spend decades making decisions for our children. From what they eat to where they go to school, from what bedtime they have to what values we instill in them, we guide them through life, step by step. But then one day, they grow up. They start making their own choices. And sometimes, those choices don't align with what we would have chosen for them. Maybe they decided to move far away. Maybe they're raising their kids differently than you did. Maybe they have different political views, different beliefs, different priorities. And that can be hard. Because deep down, we still want to protect them. We still want to steer them in the right direction. And sometimes, that comes out as advice. Are you sure that's the best career move? I don't think that's how you should be handling your child. Back in my day, we never did things like that. The intention is good. We just want to help. But to them, it doesn't feel like help. It feels like criticism. It feels like we don't trust them to handle their own lives. And the truth is, nothing pushes an adult child away faster than feeling like their parent doesn't respect their independence. So what's the solution? It doesn't mean you can't ever give advice. But the key is to wait until it's asked for. If they're struggling with a decision, instead of immediately offering an answer, try saying, "That sounds like a tough choice. What are you thinking of doing?" If they're talking about parenting challenges, instead of telling them what worked for you, try asking, "Do you want to hear what helped me, or would you rather just vent?" By giving them control of the conversation, you show that you respect their ability to navigate their own life. And ironically, when you stop offering advice so freely, they actually become more likely to ask for it. Because they don't feel like they have to defend themselves against unwanted opinions. They feel safe coming to you. They respect you not just as a parent, but as someone who trusts them to be capable, independent adults. And that's when the relationship deepens. That's when the conversations stop feeling like a parent lecturing a child and start feeling like two equals sharing wisdom, experience, and love. Because at the heart of respect is trust. And when you show your children that you trust them, they will trust you in return. And trust, once it's built, has a remarkable way of transforming relationships. When your adult children know that you believe in them, that you trust their judgment, they no longer feel the need to prove themselves to you. They no longer feel the need to push back, to rebel, to defend their choices. Instead, they open up. They share more with you. They include you in their lives, not because they feel obligated to, but because they genuinely want to. But here's where many parents unintentionally make a mistake. They build trust, they create a safe space for their children to be themselves, but then, without even realizing it, they slip back into old patterns. It happens in small moments. A comment about how they spend their money. A joke about how they discipline their kids. A sigh when they mention a career decision. To you, it might seem harmless. But to them, it feels like judgment. And judgment is the quickest way to break trust. Because think about it, how do you feel when someone judges you? When someone dismisses your choices, questions your decisions, or makes you feel like you're not good enough. It doesn't make you want to be around them more. It makes you want to pull away. And that's exactly what happens in parent-child relationships. So how do you make sure you're not unintentionally pushing your children away? By replacing judgment with curiosity. The next time your child tells you something that you don't agree with or don't understand, instead of jumping to a reaction, try this. Take a breath. Pause. And ask, "Tell me more about that." Those 5 simple words can change everything. Because instead of making them feel like they have to defend themselves, you're showing that you're interested. That you genuinely want to understand them. That you respect their perspective, even if it's different from yours. And when people feel understood, they naturally become more open. More willing to listen. More willing to engage in meaningful conversations. And isn't that what we all want? To be able to talk to our children, not as adversaries, but as equals. But here's the best part. When you practice curiosity, when you replace judgment with understanding, you don't just strengthen your relationship with your children, you actually gain something invaluable. You grow. Because the truth is, we never stop learning. And our children, even as adults, have so much to teach us. About new ways of thinking. About different perspectives. About the world as it is today, not just as it was when we were younger. And when you embrace that, when you allow your children to shape you just as you shaped them, that's when the relationship becomes truly mutual. That's when respect flows naturally, in both directions. And that's where something incredible happens. The relationship stops being one-sided. It stops being about a parent trying to guide a child, and instead, it becomes a partnership, 2 adults who respect and learn from each other. But there's something else we need to talk about. Respect isn't just about how you interact with your children. It's also about how you interact with yourself. Because let's be honest, so many parents spend decades putting their children first. Their needs, their dreams, their well-being. And that's beautiful. That's love. But what happens when your children grow up? When they no longer need you in the same way? For many parents, that shift is hard. They start feeling lost. Invisible. Like their purpose has faded. And here's where the mistake happens. They start seeking validation from their children. They want reassurance that they're still important. That they're still needed. That they still matter. And without realizing it, they begin relying on their children for something that only they can give themselves, self-respect. Because here's the truth, respect from your children starts with respect for yourself. If you walk into a room with confidence, with a sense of purpose, with a life that is full and meaningful, people take notice. Your children take notice. They don't just see you as their parent anymore. They see you as a whole person. Someone they admire. Someone they're proud of. Someone whose presence adds value to their lives, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. And that's the key. If you want to gain respect from your adult children, you have to show them that your life is still rich and fulfilling, independent of them. So ask yourself, what makes you happy outside of being a parent? What dreams have you put on hold? What passions have you neglected? Maybe it's something creative, painting, writing, music. Maybe it's something adventurous, traveling, learning a new language, trying something you never thought you'd have the time for. Maybe it's something simple, taking care of your health, making new friends, deepening your faith, or just finding more joy in the everyday moments. Whatever it is, when you pursue it, when you live your life with purpose, something shifts. Your children stop seeing you as someone who's just waiting for them to call, to visit, to give your life meaning. Instead, they see you thriving. And that changes everything. Because people, no matter their age, are naturally drawn to those who radiate fulfillment. Think about the people in your own life who inspire you. Are they the ones who are constantly waiting for validation? Or are they the ones who are actively living, growing, and embracing life? Respect is never demanded. It's earned. And the best way to earn it is by showing your children that you respect yourself enough to keep evolving, to keep living fully, no matter your age. So the question isn't, how can I make my children respect me? The question is, how can I respect myself in a way that makes them want to do the same? Because when you do that, respect doesn't just come. It lasts. And here's where the magic happens. When you stop waiting for validation and start living for yourself, something shifts in your relationship with your children. They don't feel pressure to be the source of your happiness anymore. They don't feel guilty when they're busy with their own lives. Instead, they feel inspired. They feel drawn to you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration. Because here's the thing about respect, it's not about demanding it. It's about embodying it. Think about the people in your own life whom you truly respect. Is it because they told you to respect them? Or is it because of the way they live, the way they carry themselves, the way they handle life's challenges with grace and strength? Respect is magnetic. And when your children see you as someone who is confident, fulfilled, and at peace with where you are in life, they naturally gravitate toward you. But there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle. It's about how you handle boundaries. Because the truth is, as much as we love our children, they are not our entire world. And we are not theirs. And that's okay. One of the most powerful ways to earn respect is by setting and respecting boundaries. Let's be honest, many parents struggle with this. They feel like being a good parent means always being available, always saying yes, always putting their children's needs ahead of their own. But in reality, constantly saying yes doesn't build respect. It builds expectation. And expectation can quickly turn into entitlement. Your time, your energy, your emotional well-being, they are just as valuable as anyone else's. And when you honor that, others honor it too. So, what does this look like in practice? It means not always picking up the phone the second your child calls, especially if you're in the middle of something important to you. It means not feeling guilty when you say no to a request that disrupts your peace or your plans. It means being clear about what you will and won't tolerate, whether that's in the way you're spoken to, the way you're treated, or the way your time is valued. Because here's the truth, people, your children included, will treat you the way you allow them to. And when they see that you respect yourself enough to set healthy boundaries, they will respect you more, not less. This doesn't mean being rigid or unkind. It means being clear and confident. It means showing your children that while you love them deeply, your life doesn't revolve around their every need or whim. And that is incredibly powerful. Because the moment your children realize that your respect for yourself is unwavering, they will adjust. They will start seeing you not just as a parent, but as a person, one whose time, energy, and emotions are valuable. And with that shift comes a new level of appreciation. They'll call, not because they have to, but because they want to. They'll visit, not out of obligation, but out of love. And most importantly, the respect they show you won't be forced. It will be genuine. So, if you've ever felt like your children take you for granted, or if you've ever wondered why your efforts sometimes go unnoticed, ask yourself this. Am I setting the standard for how I want to be treated? Because the reality is, respect isn't given freely. It's modeled. And when you model self-respect in every interaction, in every boundary, in every choice you make, your children will follow. Not because they have to, but because they truly, deeply want to. And that's the beauty of it. When respect is built naturally, through the way you live, the way you carry yourself, and the way you value your own time, it doesn't have to be demanded. It's simply given. But let's take it one step further. Because while self-respect and boundaries are essential, there's something else that can transform your relationship with your adult children. It's about connection. See, as we get older, it's easy to feel like the distance between us and our children is growing, not just physically, but emotionally. They have their own families, their own responsibilities, their own way of doing things. And sometimes, it can feel like we're being left behind. But here's something most people don't realize: respect and connection go hand in hand. Think about the people in your life whom you respect the most. Chances are, you also feel a deep sense of connection with them. You trust them. You value their presence. And the same applies to your children. If you want them to respect you, not just as their parent, but as a person, you have to cultivate connection in a way that feels natural, not forced. This doesn't mean prying into their lives or constantly asking for their attention. It means meeting them where they are. It means understanding that the way they communicate, the things they prioritize, and the way they show love might be different from how you did at their age. And that's okay. The biggest mistake many parents make is assuming that connection has to look a certain way. That it has to mean weekly phone calls, long visits, or traditional family gatherings. But sometimes, connection is as simple as a text message. A funny meme. A short but meaningful conversation. It's about adapting to their world instead of expecting them to adapt to yours. Because when you show them that you understand and respect their way of communicating, they will naturally open up more. They won't feel pressured. They won't feel like every conversation has to be a deep, emotional check-in. Instead, they'll feel comfortable. And when people feel comfortable, they engage more. This is how you shift from being just their parent to being someone they genuinely want to spend time with. And here's something else. When you stop making connection feel like an obligation, it becomes a choice. And when people have the choice, they choose what feels good. They choose what brings them joy. They choose who makes them feel appreciated, rather than who makes them feel guilty. And if you can be that person, not through pressure, but through understanding, you'll find that your relationship with your children will deepen in ways you never expected. So, take a step back and ask yourself, am I trying to connect with my children in a way that works for me, or in a way that works for them? Because when you meet them where they are, rather than where you think they should be, everything changes. Not just in how often they reach out, but in the way they respect you, appreciate you, and genuinely want you in their lives. And that's where things start to shift. When respect is built on a foundation of connection, everything else becomes easier. There's less tension, fewer misunderstandings, and a deeper appreciation for one another. But here's the thing, connection alone isn't enough. Because respect isn't just about how often you talk or how well you get along. It's also about how you show up in your own life. Think about this, when you were younger, who were the elders you respected the most? Was it the ones who always gave you advice, telling you what to do and how to live? Or was it the ones who led by example? The ones who had a strong sense of purpose, who kept learning, growing, and living fully, no matter their age. That's the key. Your adult children don't just respect what you say. They respect what you do. They respect how you carry yourself, how you take care of yourself, and how you continue to engage with the world around you. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that as we get older, our best years are behind us. That our main role is to watch from the sidelines as the younger generations take over. But that's not true. In fact, the more actively you participate in your own life, the more respect you naturally command. This means pursuing your own interests, maintaining your own friendships, and continuing to grow as a person. It means staying engaged, mentally, emotionally, even physically. Because let's be honest, nobody respects someone who has given up on themselves. And yet, this is something so many older parents struggle with. They put all their energy into their children and grandchildren, thinking that's what will bring them closer. But in reality, the opposite happens. When your entire world revolves around your children, it can actually push them away. Why? Because respect comes from balance. Think about it. When someone seems to have no identity outside of their role as a parent, it creates pressure. Your children might love you, but they also need space to be their own people. They need to know that you're happy, fulfilled, and thriving on your own, not just waiting for them to call, visit, or need you. So, here's a simple but powerful shift. Instead of focusing on how much time you spend with your children, focus on how you spend your time when you're not with them. What hobbies have you always wanted to explore? What friendships need rekindling? What new skills or activities could bring you joy? Because when you start living fully for yourself, your children will see it. They'll admire it. And they'll respect you for it. They'll see you not just as their parent, but as a person, someone with depth, curiosity, and a life that extends beyond them. And here's the best part. When you respect yourself enough to keep growing, learning, and living with purpose, that respect is mirrored back to you. You won't have to ask for it. You won't have to wonder why your children don't value your opinions or seek out your company. Because they will. Naturally. And not out of obligation, but out of admiration. And that admiration? It changes everything. When your adult children respect you, conversations become easier. They start asking for your advice, not because they feel they have to, but because they genuinely value your perspective. They stop seeing you as someone stuck in the past and start recognizing you as a person with wisdom, insight, and a life that's still unfolding. But here's something important. Respect isn't just about what you do. It's also about how you interact with them. Have you ever had a conversation where you felt like someone wasn't really listening? Maybe they were nodding along, but you could tell their mind was somewhere else. It doesn't feel great, does it? Now, think about the last time you felt truly heard. When someone looked you in the eye, paid attention to every word, and made you feel like what you were saying really mattered. That's the kind of listening that builds respect. One of the biggest mistakes parents make, without even realizing it, is assuming they already know what their children think, feel, or need. It's natural. After all, you raised them. You watched them grow. You probably feel like you understand them better than they understand themselves. But here's the thing, they're not the same people they were when they were kids. They've changed. They've grown. They've faced challenges you may not even know about. And when they talk to you, they don't want to be treated like the child you remember, they want to be seen as the adult they've become. That's why listening, really listening, is so powerful. It's not just about hearing their words. It's about being present. It's about putting aside your own opinions for a moment and truly understanding where they're coming from. Because when someone feels heard, they feel respected. And when they feel respected, they naturally return that respect. But what happens when you disagree? It's easy to respect someone when you see eye to eye. But what about those moments when you just don't? Maybe your child is making a decision you don't agree with. Maybe they're parenting their own kids in a way that feels completely different from how you raised them. Maybe they have views on life, relationships, or even politics that clash with yours. This is where many parents struggle. The instinct is to correct, to advise, to step in and share what you think is right. And while that comes from a place of love, it can sometimes backfire. Because here's a hard truth, your children don't need you to approve of every decision they make. But they do need to know that you respect their right to make those decisions. Think about it from your own perspective. How would you feel if someone constantly questioned your choices? If they acted as if their way was the only right way? It wouldn't feel great. And your children feel the same way. So instead of focusing on changing their minds, focus on showing them that you trust them. That even when you disagree, you believe in their ability to make their own choices and learn from them. Because that kind of trust, it's one of the deepest forms of respect. And when you give it, you get it back. And that's the shift that changes everything. When your adult children feel that you respect their independence, they start to see you differently. You're no longer just the authority figure who raised them, you're someone they can talk to, someone whose wisdom they value, someone they actually want to spend time with. But respect isn't just about stepping back and letting them make their own choices. It's also about how you show up in their lives. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract others effortlessly? You know the kind, people who light up a room, who make others feel good just by being around them. They're not necessarily the loudest or the most charismatic, but they have this quiet confidence, this positive energy that draws people in. That's the kind of presence that earns respect. Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm not that kind of person. But here's the secret, it's not about changing who you are. It's about shifting how you engage with the people around you, especially your children. Because energy is contagious. If you show up with warmth, curiosity, and a genuine interest in their lives, they'll respond in kind. If you focus on the positive, on what's going well instead of what's wrong, they'll be drawn to you. But if every conversation feels like a complaint, if every interaction is filled with frustration or disappointment, they'll start to pull away, not because they don't love you, but because it's emotionally draining. Think about it. Would you rather spend time with someone who lifts you up or someone who always brings the mood down? This doesn't mean you have to pretend everything is perfect. Life is real. Challenges are real. But the way you approach those challenges makes all the difference. If you come to your children with problems, also come with solutions. If you share your struggles, also share your hopes. If you're facing difficulties, ask for their perspective, not just their help. Because here's something powerful, when you ask for someone's opinion, you make them feel valued. And when your adult children feel that their thoughts matter to you, their respect for you deepens. But what if they don't always respond the way you'd like? What if you try to engage, to be positive, to listen, and they still seem distant? This is where patience comes in. Because respect isn't demanded, it's built over time. If your relationship has been strained, if there have been years of misunderstandings or unspoken hurts, it won't change overnight. But small, consistent efforts add up. Every moment you choose understanding over judgment. Every time you offer support instead of criticism. Every time you reach out, not because you need something, but simply to check in. These moments create a foundation. And over time, they transform the way your children see you, not just as their parent, but as someone they deeply respect. And here's something else that might surprise you. Sometimes, the best way to earn respect isn't by what you say, but by what you don't say. Think about the last time you had a conversation with someone who made you feel truly heard. Not someone who was waiting for their turn to speak. Not someone who jumped in with advice before you even finished your thought. But someone who really listened. That's rare, isn't it? Most people listen to respond, not to understand. And that's especially true in family dynamics. As parents, we've spent decades teaching, guiding, and sometimes even correcting our children. It becomes second nature to want to fix things for them, to offer advice, to step in and help. But when your children become adults, they don't always want a solution. Sometimes, they just want to be heard. And that's where a simple but powerful shift can happen. Instead of rushing to offer advice, try this. The next time your child shares something with you, whether it's a frustration at work, a challenge in their relationship, or even just a small daily struggle, resist the urge to jump in with a solution. Instead, say something like, "That sounds really tough. How are you feeling about it?" Or, "I can see why that would be frustrating. What do you think you'll do?" Just that small shift, giving them space instead of immediately offering advice, can change everything. Because when people feel heard, they feel respected. And when your adult children feel respected, they're far more likely to respect you in return. But what about when they do ask for advice? That's your opportunity to strengthen your relationship even more by framing your advice as an invitation, not a directive. For example, instead of saying, "You should do this," try saying, "Something that worked for me in the past was," or "Have you thought about trying?" It might seem like a small difference, but it completely changes the dynamic. One approach feels like a command. The other feels like a conversation. And the more you engage in conversation rather than correction, the stronger your bond will become. Now, there's one more thing that plays a huge role in gaining respect from your adult children, something that many parents overlook. It's not just about how you interact with them. It's also about how you live your own life. Because here's the truth, the most respected parents aren't the ones who try to control their children's lives. They're the ones who live their own lives with purpose and fulfillment. When your children see you engaging with the world, pursuing hobbies, staying active, learning new things, and surrounding yourself with positive people, they see you as someone to admire. But if your world shrinks down to only them, if you rely on them for all of your emotional support or social connection, it can feel like pressure, not respect. And that's not what you want. Because the most powerful way to gain respect isn't by demanding it. It's by being someone they naturally respect. And that starts with you. And here's something truly eye-opening. Respect isn't just about how your children treat you. It's also about how they see you treating yourself. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that the people who command the most respect in life aren't the ones who beg for it? They don't go around saying, "Hey, respect me." They simply live in a way that makes people naturally respect them. And that applies to you as well. If your adult children see you taking care of yourself, valuing your time, setting healthy boundaries, and living a life that brings you joy, they will respect you, not because you asked for it, but because you embody it. Let's talk about boundaries for a moment, because this is where a lot of parents struggle. When your kids were younger, your job was to be available to them at all times. If they needed help with homework, you were there. If they were sick in the middle of the night, you were up taking care of them. If they had a problem, you dropped everything to solve it. That was your role back then. But as they become adults, that role has to shift. Now, does that mean you stop being there for them? Of course not. You'll always be their parent. But it does mean that your availability needs to come from a place of balance, not sacrifice. If you say yes to every single request, drop everything whenever they call, or constantly rearrange your schedule to accommodate them, you might think you're showing love. But what you might actually be doing is teaching them that your time isn't valuable. And if they don't see your time as valuable, they won't respect it. So what does healthy balance look like? It means saying, "I'd love to help you with that, but I have plans right now. Let's find a time that works for both of us." It means answering the phone when you can, but not feeling guilty if you can't. It means showing them, through your actions, that your life is full, meaningful, and valuable. Now, I know this can feel tricky. You might worry, what if they get upset? What if they think I don't care? Here's the beautiful thing, when you set boundaries with kindness and confidence, you're not pushing them away. You're showing them that you respect yourself. And when they see you respecting yourself, they will follow your lead. But what if you've already fallen into the pattern of overgiving, always being available, or letting them take you for granted? Can you turn it around? Absolutely. It starts with small changes. The next time they assume you'll drop everything, pause. Ask yourself, do I actually want to do this right now? Or am I doing it out of obligation? If it's obligation, give yourself permission to say, "I'd love to help, but I need to take care of something first." At first, they might be surprised. That's okay. Over time, they'll adjust. And they'll respect you even more for it. And that leads us to something else, something that might be even more powerful than boundaries. The way you speak about yourself in front of your children shapes the way they see you. If you constantly downplay yourself, saying things like, "Oh, I'm just getting old," or "I'm not as sharp as I used to be," they'll start to see you through that lens. But if you speak about yourself with confidence, if you show them that you're still growing, learning, and thriving, they will see you as someone to look up to. Because respect isn't just about age. It's about attitude. And the more you respect yourself, the more others will respect you, too. Now, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked, your independence. One of the biggest shifts that happens as we age is the way our children start seeing us. When they were young, they relied on you for everything. You were their protector, their guide, the person who always knew what to do. But as they grow up and build their own lives, that dynamic starts to change. They begin to see themselves as the ones who need to look after you. And while that can be a beautiful thing, it can also create an imbalance, especially if they start treating you as if you're incapable or helpless. Have you ever noticed how some adult children start giving unsolicited advice, making decisions for their parents, or even speaking to them in a way that feels, well, condescending? It usually comes from a place of love, but let's be honest, it doesn't feel good, does it? And that's why maintaining your independence is so important. Because when your children see you as capable, active, and engaged in your own life, they respect you. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. Accepting help when you need it is smart, not weak. But it does mean showing them, through your actions, that you are still in control of your own life. So what does that look like in everyday life? It means making your own decisions about where you want to live, how you want to spend your time, and what you want your future to look like. It means continuing to learn new things, whether it's a hobby, a language, or even something as simple as trying a new technology. It means keeping an active social life, having your own friendships, and not relying solely on your children for companionship. Think about it this way: when your kids see you thriving, living with purpose, and taking care of yourself, they see you as strong. And people respect strength. But what if you've already fallen into the trap of letting them take over? What if they've started treating you like you're fragile or incapable? Can you change the way they see you? Absolutely. Start by making small, intentional choices that reinforce your independence. If they always make decisions for you, take the lead on something simple, like choosing where to eat or planning a family gathering. If they assume you can't handle certain things, surprise them. Learn how to use that new smartphone. Plan a solo trip. Take up an activity they wouldn't expect. The goal isn't to prove anything to them, it's to remind yourself that you are still fully in charge of your life. Because here's the truth: respect isn't given. It's earned. And when you show your children that you respect yourself, they will follow your lead. Now, let's talk about something that can be tricky: setting boundaries. When your children were younger, you were the one teaching them about boundaries. You set the rules, decided what was acceptable, and made sure they understood the consequences of overstepping. But as they grow into adults, that dynamic flips. Suddenly, they have their own lives, their own families, and their own way of doing things. And sometimes, without even realizing it, they start crossing boundaries with you. Maybe it's how they speak to you, treating you like a child instead of an equal. Maybe it's how they assume they know what's best for you, whether it's your health, your finances, or even your daily routine. Or maybe it's something even deeper, like making decisions about your life without asking for your input. Whatever the case may be, one thing is certain: if you don't set boundaries, they will keep pushing. Not because they don't love you, but because that's what people do when boundaries aren't clear. But here's the good news: setting boundaries doesn't have to be confrontational. It's not about arguing, demanding respect, or making them feel guilty. It's about calmly and confidently letting them know where the line is, and making sure they respect it. For example, if your child constantly gives you unsolicited advice, you can say something like, "I appreciate your concern, but I'd really like to make this decision on my own." If they tend to take over situations, remind them, "I can handle this, but I'll ask for help if I need it." And if they speak to you in a way that feels disrespectful, don't let it slide. A simple, "I don't like being spoken to that way," is enough to let them know you won't tolerate it. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to standing your ground. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And here's the thing: when you set clear boundaries, your children will respect you more, not less. Because respect isn't about age. It's about how you carry yourself. And when you show them that you won't allow yourself to be treated as anything less than an equal, they will adjust. Now, this doesn't mean they'll always agree with you. They may push back. They may even get upset. But over time, they will come to understand that respecting you isn't optional. And that's when the real change happens. That's when your relationship shifts from one of parent and child to one of two adults who truly respect each other. And isn't that what we all want? A relationship built on mutual respect, not obligation. It starts with boundaries. It starts with you. And here's something you might not expect. Sometimes, gaining respect from your adult children means respecting them first. Now, that might sound strange. After all, you're the parent. You've spent decades raising them, guiding them, and making sure they had everything they needed. But the truth is, just because someone is your child doesn't mean they automatically feel respected by you. Think about it. How many times have you disagreed with their choices? Maybe it's their career, their parenting style, or even how they handle their finances. Maybe you've given them advice they didn't ask for, or spoken to them in a way that, if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't appreciate. It's not intentional, of course. It comes from a place of love. But to them, it might feel like you don't trust them to handle their own life. And nothing makes an adult feel disrespected faster than that. So how do you change it? Start by listening more than you speak. When they talk about their struggles, resist the urge to immediately give advice. Instead, ask them, how do you feel about it, or what do you think you'll do? This simple shift tells them that you see them as capable adults, not just as your kids. Next, let go of past mistakes, both theirs and yours. Maybe they made choices you didn't agree with. Maybe they said things in the past that hurt you. But if you hold on to those things, they will always feel like they have something to prove to you. And if you hold on to your own regrets as a parent, you might accidentally overcompensate, either by trying too hard to fix things or by withdrawing altogether. The past is done. What matters now is the relationship you're building today. And finally, respect their space. Just like you value your independence, so do they. If they don't call as often as you'd like, don't take it personally. Life is busy. If they make a decision you wouldn't have made, trust that they have their reasons. And if they need space, give it freely, because when you do, they'll be much more likely to come back on their own. Respect is a two-way street. And when you give it, you get it. Now, let's talk about one of the most powerful ways to gain your child's respect, by showing them that your life is full, independent, and meaningful. There's something truly powerful about a person who is content with their own life. Someone who doesn't need to cling, doesn't need to guilt trip, and doesn't wait around for others to make them happy. And when it comes to gaining respect from your adult children, this might just be one of the most important things you can do. Show them that your life is full, with or without them. Now, that doesn't mean you love them any less. Of course not. But it does mean that you are more than just their parent. Think about it this way: if your adult child sees you constantly waiting for their call, planning your entire life around when they might visit, or making them feel like they are your only source of joy, how do you think that makes them feel? For some, it might be overwhelming. They might feel pressured, guilty, or even a little resentful. For others, they might not even notice. After all, they're busy with their own responsibilities. Either way, it creates an imbalance, one where your happiness depends too much on them. And if there's one thing that earns respect, it's a person who stands strong on their own. So, how do you show your kids that your life is full and meaningful? First, make sure you have things in your life that are just for you. Hobbies, friendships, interests, things that light you up and keep you engaged. Maybe you've always wanted to paint. Maybe you've been curious about learning a new language. Maybe you've been meaning to reconnect with an old friend. Whatever it is, now is the time. Because when your kids see you living a life that's rich and fulfilling, it sends a powerful message. I am happy, I am independent, and I am still growing. And believe me, that's the kind of energy that commands respect. Next, be someone they admire, not just as a parent, but as a person. It's easy to think that respect comes from our title as mom or dad, but the truth is, respect is earned by the kind of person you are. Are you someone who continues to learn? Someone who is open-minded, kind, and wise? Are you someone who takes care of their health, their mind, and their emotions? Because if you want your adult children to respect you, they need to see you as someone worth looking up to, not just for what you did in the past, but for who you are today. And finally, let go of any need for validation. One of the most freeing things you can do is stop seeking approval from your children. Of course, you want them to love and appreciate you. That's natural. But respect doesn't come from begging for attention, fishing for compliments, or making them feel guilty for not calling enough. It comes from standing strong in your own worth, knowing that whether they recognize it or not, you are enough. And when they see that, when they see you living fully, confidently, and independently, that's when respect happens naturally. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes parents make that can actually push their adult children away, and how to fix it. One of the biggest mistakes parents make with their adult children, without even realizing it, is holding onto the past too tightly. It's natural, of course. After all, you've spent decades raising them, guiding them, and being at the center of their world. But as they grow older, things shift. They start making their own choices, living their own lives, and seeing the world through their own lens. And sometimes, that means they won't always agree with you. They might make decisions that seem reckless or unwise. They might have different opinions about how things should be done. They might not even parent their own kids the way you would have hoped. And if you're not careful, this is where tension can creep in. The key here is to understand a simple truth: respect goes both ways. If you want your adult children to respect you, you need to respect them as well, especially their choices, even when they're different from your own. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they do. It doesn't mean you can't share your thoughts or offer advice. But it does mean learning when to step back and let them live their lives on their own terms. Think about it like this: imagine if your own parents had constantly criticized your choices as an adult. If they had told you how to raise your kids, how to spend your money, or how to live your life. Would that have made you feel respected? Or would it have made you feel like a child all over again? Your adult children need to feel like equals in the relationship. They need to know that their choices, even the ones you wouldn't have made, are still theirs to make. And when you show them that kind of respect, they'll naturally start giving it back to you. Now, let's talk about something just as important: how to keep your relationship with your adult children strong without crossing any boundaries. Because believe it or not, sometimes the best way to bring them closer is to give them a little more space. One of the hardest things for any parent is realizing that their role in their child's life has changed. When they were little, you were their protector, their teacher, their guide. They needed you for everything. But now they have their own families, their own careers, their own responsibilities. And while they still love you, they don't need you in the same way they once did. That can be a tough pill to swallow. But here's something important to remember: just because they don't need you in the same way doesn't mean they don't need you at all. The challenge is figuring out how to stay connected without feeling like you're interfering. It's about finding that balance between being involved in their lives and giving them the space to live them. Think about this: when your phone rings and you see your child's name on the screen, do you feel excited? Or do you worry that it's another conversation filled with tension, advice they didn't ask for, or criticism they don't want to hear? Now flip that around. When your child sees your name pop up on their phone, what do you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel excited to talk to you? To feel like calling you will be a bright spot in their day? Or do you want them to feel stressed, bracing for a conversation that might leave them frustrated? This is where boundaries come in. Your adult children want a relationship with you, but they also want to feel like their independence is respected. They don't want to feel like they're being parented every time they talk to you. So how do you find that balance? One of the simplest ways is to let them lead the relationship. If they call you, answer with warmth and enthusiasm. If they share something exciting, celebrate it with them. If they come to you for advice, offer it, but without expectation that they'll follow it exactly as you would. And most importantly, learn to listen more than you speak. Because when you create a space where they feel heard, valued, and respected, they'll naturally want to come to you more often. And when that happens, your relationship won't just survive, it'll thrive. Now, let's dive into another big factor that can make or break your relationship with your adult children: the power of appreciation. Appreciation is a powerful force in any relationship, but it's especially important between parents and their adult children. Think about it. When was the last time you told your child you were proud of them? Not for a major accomplishment, not for landing a big job or buying a house, but just for being the person they are today? It's easy to assume that our children know how we feel about them. After all, we've loved them their entire lives. But the truth is, people, no matter their age, need to hear it. They need to feel seen, valued, and appreciated, especially by the people who have known them the longest. Now, let's flip it around. When was the last time your child expressed appreciation for you? If it feels like it's been a while, don't worry, you're not alone. Life gets busy. Responsibilities pile up. And sometimes, people forget to express gratitude, even for the people who mean the most to them. But here's the secret: if you want more appreciation from your children, the best way to get it is to give it. The more you acknowledge their efforts, the more likely they are to mirror that behavior back to you. When they feel truly valued, they'll naturally want to return that kindness. And appreciation doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as saying, "I love the way you handled that situation," or "I admire the way you're raising your kids." Small words can have a big impact. It's also about showing gratitude for the time they spend with you. Instead of saying, "You never call," try saying, "I love hearing from you when you have time." Instead of, "You don't visit enough," say, "I really enjoy the time we do get to spend together." See the difference? One approach creates guilt, while the other creates warmth. And when you make interactions feel good, people want more of them. Now, let's talk about something that can make a huge difference in how much respect and appreciation you receive from your adult children: the power of letting go of past conflicts. Life is too short to hold on to resentment, especially when it comes to family. If there's one thing that strengthens relationships more than anything, it's the ability to forgive and move forward. We all have history with our children. Some moments were wonderful, others may have been difficult. Maybe there were arguments that left wounds. Maybe choices were made that led to disappointment or hurt. But at the end of the day, the past can only hold power over you if you let it. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending things never happened. It means choosing peace over bitterness. It means understanding that your relationship with your child today is more important than any disagreement from yesterday. And here's the beautiful thing: when you release the weight of old conflicts, you open the door to deeper respect. Your child sees that you are someone who values love over pride, connection over being right. That kind of wisdom is powerful. If there's something unresolved between you and your child, it's never too late to extend an olive branch. A simple, "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I love you, and I'm proud of you," can heal more than you realize. At the end of the day, respect is not something you demand. It's something you cultivate. And when you lead with love, patience, and understanding, respect will naturally follow. So if you ever wonder whether your child truly values you, remember this: the influence you've had on them, the lessons, the love, the sacrifices, those things don't disappear. They are woven into who they are. They may not always say it. They may not always show it in the way you'd like. But deep down, they know. And when you keep showing up, keep being the best version of yourself, and keep building that connection, the respect and appreciation you deserve will come back to you in ways you never expected. Because in the end, love always finds its way home. Thank you for watching, and if this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them. Until next time, take care and cherish the moments that truly matter.